Hello everyone, no have name I want here, otherwise known as Patrick, and welcome to a different series I'm going to call How to Deal With. So for this series, my plan is to go over some units that are very common or very problematic for one reason and another, and just explain very common ways to deal with that unit. Uh, this is directed more towards newer players. If you're more experienced, I don't expect you to get a whole lot out of this. But I do hope that if you are newer and you just can't seem to deal with a specific card, I hope that I can showcase some very reasonable responses for that unit. And this episode is Thorn Elemental. Thorn Elemental is a Sylvan unit. It's 12 gold. It has spellproof, physical damage return, and an ability that really never ever comes into play. And it has 4 power, 1 movement, 7 health. So, the reason this is such a big problem for a lot of lists is because of its 2 keywords and spellproof and physical damage return. So usually, how you deal with physical damage return, or PDR, is magic damage, because physical damage return only affects physical damage and magic damage doesn't proc that. The problem with that is a vast majority of magic damage comes from abilities. So the fact that it also has spellproof means a vast majority of responses to Thorn Elemental just don't work, because if you use something like Lightning Strike, it deals 2 magic damage to target unit. Usually, Ermengarde's response to non-magic damage counters or physical damage counters simply doesn't work on Thorn Elemental because of the spellproof. And with its big stats and the physical damage return, it pretty much beats every single unit if they hit it first, so that's another really big problem. The ability on the bottom just means if something were to move over it but not attack it, it takes 3 damage. That really only affects like 4 units in the game, so it's probably not going to come up, but it is something. So, very big threat. Really great stats and just hard to deal with. So how does each faction deal with it? I'm going to go in alphabetical order, starting with Ermengarde, and then Gath, and Sylvan. I'm going to explain how easy it is for them to deal with the unit, and just some counters and such. First, a universal answer to Thorn Elemental is actually quite common, that any list can do. A very simple solution is to just ignore it until it's the last unit. That might seem weird, but simply put, Thorn Elemental is slow. It has 1 movement. Yes, it can be the enemy can move it because Sylvan has very good movement options, but you can very easily just ignore it. Body block it with like 5 health units. It's not hard to just get out of its threat range and just deal with the rest of the army, and then pretty soon it's just the Thorn Elemental, and at that point you can just throw stuff at it until it dies. It's not a problem. So that is a universal solution, is to just ignore it, move around it, and just kill everything else. And then when it's just Thorn Elemental, then you just throw stuff at it, and then hopefully you have enough resources to just take the middle with anything. But there are, of course, some solutions. I have both heroes here, just so I can give a response to both heroes. And then I'm going to have just units in the middle that both heroes can use. So first, let's just go over Aurelia. Relia has a very easy answer, and that's just Sun's Fervor. It's an ability that she has that gives her both charging and imbued, which is very strong, especially against Sylvan. They have this card called Witch Hunter. Probably should have put this up beforehand. But this is a very effective unit to pair with Thorn Elemental, because Thorn Elemental, you're pretty much forcing the enemy to take imbued or some form of spell cancel like Tempest Mage. The Witch Hunter does very good against them because it has magic resist 3, and its big block of text just says it gains charging and an extra power against imbued targets and units with more mana than they do health. And it also has pathing, so that's another big thread of it has. So these two are very common pairs, and Aurelia just answers both of them very simply with just Sun's Fervor. It gives them charging and imbued. So baseline, she can just charge the Witch Hunter because the imbued is optional, which is very nice. I think it's the only optional imbued thing in the game. So she can just charge the Witch Hunter for physical damage, kill it, get it out of there. And if she wants to, she can use imbued on the Thorn Elemental and kill it without taking any damage back. So Aurelia is probably the easiest hero to deal with it, just because Sun's Fervor answers both of these units very simply. Tristan needs a bit more to deal with it with Sunblade. This is probably your best option, because if Tristan just decided to whack it, he would just die. The physical damage return and just 4 damage usually will always kill Tristan. So having a Sunblade is pretty necessary, I would say, if your only problem is Thorn Elemental. And Witch Hunter also doesn't really do well against Tristan either, because Tristan does have Steadfast. So Witch Hunter would have to first walk up and then hit him, which gives Tristan time to either move out of the way or something else. I also have Divine Favor 3 here, just because with Divine Favor 3, it means he can take a hit from Thorn Elemental. So Tristan can take a hit, can hit him first, and then he'd go down to 5 health. And then it also makes it so that Thorn Elemental that can't then just hit him back and kill him. So this does give you an option of pre-hitting. And again, with Steadfast, Shield's actually really strong on him, because the only way Sylvan can hit him then for free was just with the Tether Archers. If I can spell it right. Tether Archers. But the thing is, if they want to get their most effective range, they have to charge, which Tristan having Steadfast negates. So Tristan having shields against Thorn Elemental as well as Sunblade is a very good answer to that as well. And then as for universal answers, Dawnbringer Paladin is pretty alright, just because he has imbued, he can hit the Thorn Elemental and not take any damage back from the physical damage return. But he does need it to be weakened first, which is a bit of a problem. But a big downside to that is Witch Hunter does really well against Paladin. He can charge it and only take 1 damage and take the Paladin down to half health, so be wary about the Witch Hunter. And same thing goes for Tempest Mage. I guess all their magic damage options. I have Tempest Mage, Adept Tempest Mage, Grand Wizard. The Tempest Mages have imbued, which means they can just attack the Thorn Elemental with their range attacks, not take any damage back. But they also pair very well with Spellcradle Seraph, because Spellcradle can buff them to where they can ignore Spellproof, which is very great, because then they can use their ability to damage the Thorn Elemental. especially with a unit like Grand Wizard, which Arcane Blast does 4 magic damage. Making that so it then can actually target Thorn Elemental is very good because it zones Thorn Elemental out even more because they don't want to take Arcane Blasts because their plan with Thorn Elemental is usually keep it at full health and then just kill anything that comes near it later on. But again, Witch Hunter is a very big counter to all these units, so be careful. Just simply using a knight answers it, but it is something to be wary of. But anyway, this is how uh, Erengard deals with Elemental. With usually all magic damage, Erengard can answer most things pretty safely. Uh, the heroes, of course, great answers to both of these units. Anyway, let's go on to Gath. So Gath is, I would say, has the best answer to Thorn Elemental for a few reasons. Anyway, so first let's go over Argog, the heroes. Argog, again, he probably needs Sunblade, but he has a very easy solution because he just has a ton of damage. With Sunblade, he has 5 magic damage, and that essentially kills Thorn Elemental super easily. And it's not too hard to get for Gath to get just to deal 2 damage to it simply. But Argog usually just needs Sunblade, like a lot of the melee heroes, simply because without it, they're just gonna kill themselves if they attack the Thorn Elemental. Carthul has probably the hardest response to Thorn Elemental because all of his abilities, like Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt, are magic damage, but Spellproof negates that, and they don't have a unit like Spellcradle Seraph to make it so they can then target Spellproof. So Carthul's real only solution is with using Battle Fury on something like a Skorg Hellion to hit the Thorn Elemental. Because Skorg Hellions really don't care if they die. The whole reason they exist is to just deal damage. If they die dealing 5 damage, that's a huge upside for you. They'll gladly kill themselves to deal 5 damage to a Thorn Elemental. But other than that, they just have very good solutions. Vesuvian Archer completely destroys Thorn Elemental. It's ranged. It has imbued Burn 1, which is magic damage, so it just shoots Thorn Elemental to death very easily. Units like Minotaur and Hellbear do an alright job. They do take retaliation, but again, imbued, charging, and burn 2 does damage to Thorn Elemental later on. And just Gath in general has a ton of stats. They have stats out the ass. They can easily just walk up and threaten the Thorn Elemental just by whacking it twice and be fine. Stuff like Cave Troll has high stats. Of course, he doesn't want to hit it first, but 5 damage is 5 damage. If you need to kill a Thorn Elemental, 5 damage will do it, but these are usually your best options for Erengard. Very common units, very strong units, but Erengard does have very easy answers to Thorn Elemental, as well as Gath can very easily just kill the rest of the Thorn Elemental's supporting army units, and then just throw stuff at it and not care. This is how Gath would deal with it. And then last but not least is Sylvan. And I would say Sylvan probably has the hardest response to Thorn Elemental, simply because a lot of their units are very expensive that can deal with it, and they can easily be countered. For example, Anwin, a very common hero, has no answer to Thorn Elemental. if you're playing Anwin, you are relying on your units to deal with it, because the best thing she has is like Tranquility, because it can prevent your unit from dying, but that's not very reliable. Everything else is kind of just keeping stuff alive, but you can't really keep stuff alive against Thorn Elemental, because if it's gonna kill you, it's gonna kill you, and if you hit it, it's gonna kill you. So the real only answer Anwin has is like Tranquility, or just using its passive to get more actions to kill other things, but yeah, Anwin doesn't really have an answer. Caladrix does have some pretty good answers. First and foremost, he has Backstab. Uh, Usually, physical damage return counters Backstab, because the whole point of Backstab is that you don't take any damage when attacking a unit. But Caladrix can easily answer that with something like True Strike. True Strike is you pay a mana and you deal pure damage. Pure damage is, of course, the best damage because nothing counters it. So Caladrix can easily run up, deal true damage to it, not take any damage back because of Backstab, and then I usually have just a Buckler on him, just because then Thorn Elemental can't just whack him to death, but Caladrix does have an answer to Thorn Elemental. Their units are probably like these are like literally the only 3 units that can deal with it. The other factions have units that do alright against it, despite not being a good matchup, but they do have things. Gath can just throw stuff into it and not care. Erengard does have Spell Cradle to deal magic damage. They have other units that can do alright. But for Sylvan, it's really just these 3 units. Silverglade Ranger is probably the best answer, because of Silverglade Ranger and Dryad are probably your best options, because they have a unique passive where they break on attack. So what's unique about this is, like, let's take the Silverglade Ranger. He attacks the Thorn Elemental. Now, before damage is calculated, break is applied. What break does is that it removes all keywords. So, Silverglade Ranger attacks Thorn Elemental. It loses spellproof and physical damage return, and then the damage goes through. So, physical damage return would not proc and damage the Silverglade Ranger at all, and he would deal damage to the Thorn Elemental for free, essentially, similar to Caladrix. He has 5 health, meaning he can survive a hit from Thorn Elemental. So Great Ranger is a very solid option. Dryad's another similar option. It attacks, it breaks the target, and then you're fine. Green Dragon's an alright option. Simply because of its passive, Green Dragon cannot receive more than 4 damage in a single turn. Means Green Dragon can attack Thorn Elemental, and then physical damage return would deal 5 damage to it, and then he would take 4 damage in retaliation, so that'd be a whole 9 damage, but since Green Dragon can only take 4 damage in a turn, he takes 4 damage, so it's not that big of a deal. But the big problem with these is that they're all very expensive. They require great positioning. Dryad can easily die to a variety of Sylvan units. Silverglade Ranger is kind of slow, so you need to use some mobility options to threaten it. And Green Dragon is just very expensive. It's not really something you can fit into any list because of how expensive it is. But Sylvan does. This is about all Sylvan really has to deal with Thorn Elemental. You could run your own Thorn Elemental. It does fine against itself, but I'm trying to just rely on units that do great against it, great counters against it, and this is about all Sylvan has. So anyways, that's how you deal with Thorn Elemental. I hope I got my point across pretty clearly, and I hope the next time you go against a Thorn Elemental, you don't completely get your ass kicked by it, because you'll have hopefully one of these units in your army to help you deal with it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.